Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I typically make videos reviewing movies and TV shows, but today I'm going to switch gears and talk about my other favorite topic, which is reading and books. And in this particular video, I'm going to spend some time talking about my toddler's favorite books. So if you're interested, continue watching. One of the first things I researched and put on my baby registry when I found out I was pregnant was books for children. And I think some of that stems from my own childhood memories. My parents, both my mom and dad, were very fond of reading and inculcated that habit in both my sister and I from a very, very young age. Although we grew up in 90s India in a typical middle class family, I felt like my parents went above and beyond to make sure that we were constantly fed a healthy diet of books. It was not just academics, but everything from storybooks to fairy tales to puzzle books. We had like a diverse variety of books that we were exposed to. And I think that's one of the reasons why even to this date, I really enjoy reading. Despite all the million distractions that we have today and how noisy our surroundings are with social media and all these OTT platforms, I still make it a point to take out time every day to read something. And I wanted to pass on that passion to my child as well. So my toddler is just under 2, and I think over the past 6 months or so, she has herself become very fond of reading, although we had introduced books to her at a much younger age. So I wanted to spend some time to talk through some of my, or rather her, favorite books, and I hope you find this information valuable. We first introduced books to our kid when she was around 4 months old. She was obviously very young to understand anything or actually read the book, but we just wanted to create a habit. We read to her as often as we could during the day, but especially so during the night, as part of her bedtime routine. And slowly she started associating the reading of the books with, her bedtime. So it was sort of like a cue for her. And while she was too young, like I said, to really understand the book itself, she started showing interest in the images that she was seeing. She found a lot of the sounds that we made really funny. So here are some of the books that we actually started off with. So this is the first one. As you can see, this is a black and white book. Most kids' books are very bright and colorful, and rightfully so. But when kids are that young, they don't really have a lot of color perception. And in fact, books like this, which are monochromatic, hold their attention better. You'll also see a lot of flashcards, which are, in black and white at that age. So this is a very fairly simple book. It isn't actually a story or anything. It's just, lots of characters with just words in, like, again, high contrast color, like red. So she just often spent a lot of time just flipping through this book and just found everything very engaging and interesting. As she started getting older, some of the other books she really enjoyed were books which had some textures to it, and where you could, there were flaps and you could sort of lift them to unveil more information. And her all-time favorite is Dear Zoo. This is a book that she continues to read and really enjoy. About animals, very simple, very cute, and then you can just open the flap to reveal the animals. Initially, her excitement about this book was just, the fact that she could do this. But as she's gotten older, we actually ask her what the animal is, what sound does it make. And so it's just a nice way of sort of building their knowledge. Some other books which are similar to Dear Zoo are, again, an all-time classic, Where is Baby's Belly Button? This was a book that she actually first picked up at her daycare, and then we ended up buying it off of Amazon. Another book that she's always liked, Where's the Ladybug? There are tons and tons of books like this where you can just lift a flap and, reveal an animal or an object. The reason why she liked this book when she was much younger was just because of the textures, she just found all of the colors and textures really interesting. Between the ages of 1 and 2 is when kids develop their language and vocabulary skills. So around this time, we started introducing books to her more often. And I think one of the first books that we introduced to her was Brown Bear, What Do You See? This book is actually missing its cover, and you can tell by its condition that it's really well loved. also well abused. We should probably get her a new version of this book, but we're trying to teach her that it's not okay to throw your books or to mistreat your books. You should treat them well. I think one of the reasons why this book is such a classic and can be found in nurseries or all across America is because it's very repetitive. And I think at this age, kids appreciate that. Because she loved this book so much, we ended up buying its sister book, which is Polar Bear, What Do You Hear? It's very similar in terms of structure, but the names of the animals and some of the language that's used here is slightly, more complicated or complex. So she is enjoying this book now, now that she's sort of closer to 2. Again, really lovely animation, and again, just classic, a classic book. I'm gonna stay with the theme of animals because I think 90% of her books revolve around them. And this one is a personal favorite, and it's called Llama Llama Mrs. Mama. I bought this book without actually knowing what the book was about. I just had heard so much about it that I wanted to get it. And this book is actually about a llama that's going to its first day of school. And this was around the time when we had started daycare, and I found this book just very moving and very touching. I wasn't sure if our kid would take to it, but she loves it. It's again very rhythmical. It's almost like a poem, so kids will really enjoy it. It's quite long actually. I mean, it's one of the few books in our collection that's actually more than like 10 pages or so. But I have found that she stays engaged through it. It will take time for the kid to sort of get through the first few pages. Initially, they'll just, like to read the first 2 or 3 pages that are most familiar to them. But if you keep at it, they'll start enjoying the whole book and sort of develop the patience to sit through it. Another book that she really enjoys is The Very Hungry Caterpillar. This is also a really popular book. It's about the journey of a caterpillar from the stage of an egg to a butterfly and all the things it does in between, which is mostly just eating food, to be honest. And I liked this because we were able to introduce a lot of fruits to her this way, and again she could associate it with what she was eating in her day-to-day life. It's really interesting how kids' brains work and how they memorize things, because after reading this book consistently for a few days, when we offered her any fruit like blueberries or strawberries or something the next day, she would instantly say hungry caterpillar because she wanted to sort of read the book. Again, highly recommend this book. It's really. And the next 2 books that I'm going to talk about are slightly different because they incorporate audio or sound in the book itself, so they're sort of electronic books. The first one is called the 100 Words book. We bought this I think about around the time when our daughter was about 18 or 19 months old, and she was really starting to talk and try to make conversation with us. It was also during the pandemic, and we found that with all of these other books, sometimes she wanted someone to sit and read with her, whereas with a book like this you can sort of give it to them and expect them to be a little more independent. Of course, the sound and the light and the music obviously attracts them. So I love the fact that it's a bilingual book. It's in both English and Spanish, and I wish there were books like this for Indian languages, because I often struggle to find books for her in Telugu, which is my mother tongue, or in Hindi. Most of the books I think in those languages are geared towards slightly older kids. So books like this would be fantastic, and they might exist, I just might not be aware. So it basically talks about all the colors, the clothes, food, and you can just press on each of the items and it sort of speaks that word aloud. I think it's absolutely brilliant, this book. And in similar vein, there's one more book. I just need to figure out where it is. Here we go. It's called Noisy Farm. This is also a very popular book. I've seen it in a lot of bookstores and in a lot of people's Instagram posts of their nurseries. It's very similar. Like, you have all these farm animals and you can sort of press on the animal's body and you'll hear the animal's sound. Our daughter found this very amusing. We found it annoying after a point, but I guess you have to sort of live it. I know I've gone through quite a list of books, and I'm going to link all of them down in the description box below, so that if you would like to take a look or purchase, you can do so. this is by no means an exhaustive list. We actually have all of her books laid out on her bookshelf here. This is actually a magazine rack that we bought from Amazon, but I thought it was perfect for a Montessori style bookshelf. Often, so before we got this shelf, we were storing her books in like a normal bookcase like this, so you know, all the books stacked up like this. But we found that she found it very difficult to put the books back in place. And as we started to teach her, you know, that hey, you've got to clean up after yourself and put things back where you took them from, we realized this sort of a setup was proving to be difficult, especially with some of the larger and bulkier books. So I just read up online, and a lot of, you know, people recommended like a front facing bookshelf. And I mean, you can find lots of these shelves obviously on Pottery Barn and Amazon and Crate and Barrel, etc. But I really liked how sleek and compact this was, because we live in an apartment. I did not want something super bulky. It's also the perfect height for her to pick up things. So we put all of the books that she's currently reading or enjoying here. And everything else sort of goes in like a storage box like this. And I put it inside in our bedroom, where she sometimes goes to pick out her playthings and stuff like that. We also have another set of books that's in the storage. Those are books that she's either too young for, or books that she has outgrown. So that way we can sort of circulate between these three places. We try to sort of freshen up this shelf every few weeks. I'll take out 2 books and introduce 2 new books. That way she doesn't get bored of reading the same book over and over again. Pre-pandemic, I would say that what we used to do was, if there was a book that she was too old for, or that was, you know, she was not very interested in, because, you know, not every kid is the same. Some kids gravitate towards certain kinds of books, and some don't. So we would actually go and give it to the public library, our city's free public library. Or there are lots of donation boxes here that I would just go and put the books there. There's also a lovely concept here where you can sort of give a book and take a book in return. So we did that sort of thing as well. But now, you know, we are in like the pandemic, so obviously those kinds of things are not happening. But again, like I said, I want to teach my daughter that that, you know, we are fortunate that we can buy books and read books. It's a position of privilege, and that, you know, she's not going to get a book every week. She has to, you know, spend time with the books that she has. I know I spoke briefly about it earlier, but one of the things that I'm really sort of slightly disappointed about is that I don't have such a vivid collection of books for her in our native languages. Telugu is obviously my mother tongue, but, you know, we also speak Hindi at home. So I remember asking both my, you know, parents and in-laws to sort of get lots of kids' books when they were visiting us, and they did. But despite their best efforts, I have to say that those books were definitely geared for kids who are at least 3 or 4 years old. They're not very simple like this. They're also not board books. So board books are books like this. They're sort of more durable, and, you know, kids like to put things in their mouth. They like to chew on the edges. So if you have like a normal paper book, they are, you know, it's more prone to wear and tear. It's harder to maintain, harder to clean as well. I don't know why there is a gap in the market, or like I said, maybe there are books now that I'm just not aware of. But there were a few books that I wanted to show you guys that that we've tried reading to her and she really enjoys, which are in our native languages. So this is, again, this is a very, very well loved book, but as you can say by its state, you know, because it's not a board book, it's been damaged. So this is basically the Telugu alphabet. It's just, you know, the simple A, A, E, E, and with each alphabet, you know, you get a word and an image. And at first I wasn't sure if our baby would be able to get the hang of it, but she loves this book. In fact, she loves and finds it very amusing when I read out the entire alphabet to her, and the images certainly help. But here's my question again. Some of the words against the alphabet, and of course this is very specific to Telugu, are so complex. They're not as simple as, say, apple or ball. They're like super complicated, and I'm like, who wrote this book? Like, this is definitely not for a kid. Like, some of the words are complicated even for an adult like me. So I wish, those things were taken care of. Another book that, this is a Hindi book, is Gol Mol Bol. It's like a lovely collection of Hindi rhymes and poems that sort of make me very nostalgic and take me back to childhood. It's also very beautifully illustrated and like a very high quality paper. Again, lovely, to sort of introduce another language to the kid. Last but not the least, I want to give a shout out to books by Dr. Seuss. I think we got this as a collection of books, and the book Hop on Pop is a personal favorite. It's so fun to read, especially to read aloud with the kid. And I feel like if you're trying to teach your kid to talk, these are the best books to begin with. She's also now really started enjoying One Fish, Two Fish and Fox and Socks. No wonder these books are so popular. And if there's one word I would use to describe them, it's fun. Highly recommend buying this collection. I think this is one of those books that they'll really enjoy for a very long time. I think that's it. I think I've gone through most of our toddlers book collection. I hope you guys found this video useful and valuable, and I hope that it sort of nudges you in the direction of making your kid a reader. I think having these books has really helped us preserve our sanity during lockdown, because we really didn't want to give our child the iPad or the phone for hours together. I mean, of course there are days when we have to do it for a little bit, but because she's so used to books and reading, we find that more often than not she gravitates towards them and doesn't even ask us for the phone or the iPad or any screen time. Touch wood, I hope that doesn't change. Introducing books and reading to them at a young age is something that they will appreciate and thank you for later in their life. Happy reading.